thank you all for joining us. We're excited to have you join us for this amazing informational webinar, but even more excited to have you all join us in October in 2023. Today, we're joined not only by our president and founder, Nicola Balmain, but we're also joined by the hosts for our upcoming trip to Guatemala, Dr. Stuart Seides, as well as his wife, Anne Seides. But before we get to our amazing hosts who joined us this evening, I'd like to just welcome Nicola to tell us a little bit more about Nanda Journeys, why traveling with Nanda is such an amazing experience. Nicola, thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael, and welcome everybody. For those of you that are familiar with Nanda Journeys, welcome back. Thank you so much for your continued interest in our international programs. And for those of you that are new to Nanda Journeys, let me please extend a very warm welcome. Welcome to the Nanda family. So Nanda Journeys is a lifelong passion of mine. I worked in the travel industry since the age of 17 in the northwest of England. I came to the United States in 2001, and I truly fell in love with the style of travel that we're going to introduce to you this evening, which is immersion, people-to-people type experiences. So at Nanda Journeys, we like to say that we do things with purpose and passion here. And we're very, very proud of the accomplishments that we've had so far. And again, welcome to Nanda Journeys, where everybody is family. And I hope you'll be able to join us on this amazing Guatemalan adventure later this year. Something that I'm really proud of at Nanda Journeys is the evolution of this phrase, the Nanda way. It isn't something I geniusly dreamt up. It actually came to us through our clients, our leaders, the people we interact with overseas. They kept saying to us, we love the Nanda way. And really that just made me feel very proud, because we just developed a program that was authentic and immersive, and that came across from all of our travelers. So the Nanda way is all about being culturally responsible, being really connected to the community and the culture of the destination that you're visiting. Being responsible as we travel, really trying to make sure that all of our travel dollars that we're spending on your behalf stays in the local community. We try to be as supportive as possible to the local people, the local community, nonprofits that we visit. And as we go through the webinar tonight, you'll learn that Guatemala is extra special to us for that very reason. Please don't ask me for a catalog. We don't have one at Nanda Journeys. All of our programs are created bespoke. So we're very excited to have developed this wonderful opportunity for you this evening.
Yeah, and there's so many things that make Nanda Journeys so unique and special, and the experience is so unbelievable. And one of the many reasons that they're so amazing are the hosts that you have. And before we kind of get to the hosts, want to just remind everybody today that this webinar is more of a conversation, and we want each and every one of you to participate in the conversation. So even though you're muted, we're going to be answering questions. Any questions that you have, just please click on the chat or the question and answer button at the bottom of your screen and ask any questions that you have. I'll be kind of infusing the questions into our conversation today, so that way you too can be a part of our conversation and have all of your questions answered by our three amazing professionals. So let's get to our hosts. Nicola, tell us a little bit about who's going to be hosting our trip to Guatemala.
Yeah, we're very, very fortunate and honored to not only have these wonderful delegation leaders as professionals, but friends as well. They've participated in Nanda Journeys previously, and I'm honored to have them as your delegation leaders. So Dr. Stuart Seides, he's the Executive Director for MedStar Heart Vascular Institute in Washington, D.C. He's also the past president and board chair of the Medical Society of the District of Columbia, and he served 2 terms as the president of the American Heart Association. He's also a fellow of the American College of Physicians and the American College of Cardiology. And not only is he a specialist in the heart, he is a heart-forward person whom we're very, very privileged to call a friend. He's also going to be joined by his wife, Anne Seides. And Anne also is an accomplished professional in the healthcare field, having a very, very distinguished career as a corporate vice president at MedStar Health. She has system-wide oversight of many of the clinical services lines, and she's also been the president of the Houston Cardiovascular Nursing Society. It's very, very wonderful to have somebody as experienced as Anne, as a nurse practitioner who also has an MBA from the University of Chicago. So let us welcome onto screen both Stuart and Anne, and let me first say thank you so much for being part of this journey. So welcome, Stuart. I'd love for you to share with our audience why Nanda Journeys and why travel like this.
Well, thank you, Nicola. That's a lovely introduction, and I will try to live up to your billing. I think that traveling, and Anne and I have traveled quite a bit in a variety of different circumstances. I think you could either travel as a spectator, or you can travel as a participant. Traveling as a spectator is fun and it's interesting. It's like watching a movie or watching something through a window. It's very enjoyable. On the other hand, if you travel as a participant, where you are embedded in the culture, the life, walking the streets, as it were, with people with whom you are visiting, that is a very different kind of experience, and it's the kind of experience that we've had with Nanda and with other, with its predecessor, People to People. And I think that gives one a whole different perspective. In particular, I would say healthcare and medicine. If you understand healthcare, if you understand how people attend to their health for themselves or their families, how they access it, how the society addresses it, all of those things gives you a sort of a deep drill down into understanding their society. Because look, health and well-being is critical to all human beings, across the planet. And yet the resources we have, the way we address it, our priorities differ from culture to culture. So for those of us in the healthcare field, to have a unique perspective from which to understand other cultures. The other thing I would say is, when I look back and at some of the journeys we've taken, some of which, for example, I remember our a trip we took to China, for example, a way back. We went to a very high-tech hospital. The people were delighted to see us there, both the patients and the professionals, the healthcare providers. Number one, they want to know that you care about them, care that they matter, that this group of Americans and even others are there, and you care about them. Moreover, you see some extraordinary cultural things. Again, just to reflect on one of the trips we took to China, you go to this high-tech hospital and you go into the lobby, and they've got a Western pharmacy with all of the drugs and things that we are used to prescribing, but they have an equally large and busy traditional Chinese medicine pharmacy sitting right there in a high-tech hospital. And it gives you an opportunity to understand, for example, in this society, in that society, how important, for example, traditional medicine is to them. And I'm just reflecting on that because, of course, that's a place that we've been, and we've not, obviously, we've not been to Guatemala. And of course, one of the reasons we are excited to go is because of Nicola's passion and experience around that country. And I'll be glad to talk more about how we went down this trail, but we talked about where should we go, where would we like to go, where would we like to lead a group. And we have an extraordinary resource in Nicola with her connections and interest in this country.
Thank you so much. And I love that you reference China, because similarly to that, one of the things that we're excited to share with everybody this evening is the alternative medicine. And given that Guatemala is a 45% indigenous population and access to healthcare is really not that great, the use of indigenous medicine is critical to being able to deliver healthcare. So I wonder, Anne, if you can share with us, who do you think should participate in a journey like this? You know, it's an interprofessional delegation, and why do you think it's valuable to attend as a professional healthcare member?
Well, this is a very unique trip. You know, lots of people have been a lot of places, and this is not Europe. And I'm not saying Europe is lovely. Europe is ancient and has beautiful sights to see, but this is a very, very unique place. And as you know, I was there many decades ago when I was a teenager because my father was posted to Panama. Mm-hmm. And I'm very excited to go back. One of the aspects of it that is unique both to medicine and in general, I think, is that you've got as we call it, you know, the indigenous population. They're the Indians. They were Indians who were already there, and then you have the people who descended from the Spanish when they occupied Central America, and everybody gets along. And it's quite interesting, the interaction between the people and the interaction on the it will be interesting on the healthcare side in particular, I think. But you know, this is not your typical European. This is not Italy. This will be very different and in a good way.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing. Well, let's jump right in and share a little bit more with everybody about what we have planned for them and why they should get excited, because we've been excited for many, many weeks. So let's get everybody all excited.
Absolutely. Yeah. So to get to the meat and potatoes and why we're all here to talk more about Guatemala and the beauty of the journey we're about to partake, Mayans, Mountains, and Medicine, departing October 28th to November 5th of this year. We fly into Guatemala City. It's a round trip out of Guatemala City, but when we arrive in Guatemala City, we transfer immediately over to Antigua, where we'll be spending the first 3 nights of our trip. After our 3 nights in Antigua, we travel west to Lake Atitlán for 2 evenings in Lake Atitlán, before again heading back to Guatemala City for 2 evenings before traveling north for a day trip up to Tikal National Park. And that's probably one of the biggest highlights of the trip. I can't wait to talk about that later this evening in terms of beauty. You know, when a lot of people think of Guatemala, they think of the culture, they think of the indigenous aspects of it, but the beauty, many of the images that you see that have the landscape, it's all Guatemalan landscape. So the beautiful image in the beginning, that was Guatemala. So you're in for amazing scenery as well as amazing people and amazing stories and an amazing culture. After our stop at Tikal National Park, we come back to Guatemala City before departing home on our final day. There are 3 major aspects to this amazing journey that we're going to talk about today. The core of our journey is our continuing education. We also have plenty of time for cultural immersion and cultural experiences. And we do encourage everybody to bring a guest because there is something for everyone. We're going to touch upon our guest program as well. But before we get to the cultural immersion and to the guest programs, let's talk first about the core of our journey, which is the continuing education and peer engagement. This is what makes our journeys so unique. It's a continuing education aspect. Throughout the journey, you'll experience high levels of professional engagement, both with your fellow travelers, as well as the experiences that you'll have with the locals. Nicola, tell us a little bit more about the importance of professional engagement and some of the experiences. Let's talk a little bit about the experiences that we're going to have on tour.
Definitely. And that's really, again, my thanks to Stuart and Anne for being collaborative in creating a mission statement. And we do a lot of goal setting right up front. What do we want to learn? What do we want to accomplish? And that is really the core of the program. So you're going to have high level engagements with professionals in academia, in healthcare. You're going to actually visit medical facilities. You're going to meet with physicians, with nurses, with local people that teach healthcare in all various realms. I mentioned earlier about the rural, urban, indigenous kind of access. We're going to learn all about that and how they collaborate together to deliver healthcare in Guatemala. You know, cultural diversity is really important. And Stuart, I think you mentioned this to me. that it's really important to understand different cultures. We're a diverse population here in the United States. And to be able to have an experience like this in Guatemala allows you to really ramp up your understanding of different cultures and to incorporate that into your everyday work. And might you give us an example, Stuart, of when you've actually been able to incorporate something that you've learned on one of these previous journeys?
So I think there are so many. It's sort of difficult to choose one as being standing out. And as I said, one of the things that I have enjoyed so enormously is the collegiality and fellowship of the fellow healthcare professionals and providers. They want to show you what they can do. They want to show you what they are capable of. They know that their resources often are not at the same level as what might be available in the United States. But that notwithstanding, they are very proud of what they can do. And these people are extraordinarily dedicated to their work. I think that we learn, I think, from them what can be done, sometimes with very limited resources, how important it is to be able to make people feel well. And after all, in medicine, we only really have two things we do. We think what's most important is to make you better, but what's really most important is to make you feel better. And
yeah, exactly.
they don't always have the resources to make people better, to cure, because they don't have the resources that we do. But they are dedicated as much, maybe even more so than some of us, in making the patients feel better. When when you see some of these clinics that have people who come from long distances and overnight and struggle, you realize that there is enormous value that is being created for them by the professionals.
Yeah, I'm particularly excited, I think, on the professional engagement side of things. Yes, we're going to visit, healthcare facilities, and we'll see access to private medicine and public medicine. And that's something that I think, to compare and contrast access and how people are treated. And then the visit with the shaman, I think, is going to be really, really exciting on this particular program. And also with a birth lady. So again, you're going to see how the incorporation of traditional and indigenous medicine is really important. But at Nanda Journeys, we really focus on high-level engagement. And those engagements, I think you can both attest to, they go on forever. So connections that you've made on previous exchanges, and I've heard this many, many times from all of our leaders and our participants. This is a delegation of participants actually in Peru, that they maintain an established network. And they are willing to give back through peer engagement, through professional knowledge sharing. And one thing I'm really excited about for Guatemala is the need is significant. And I think the people you'll meet along the way will be the first to admit that they need your support. They need your intellect. They need your resources. And the excitement that's going to build, I think, is just, it's something that I could talk about all night, but we don't have all night, right, Michael? So we have to move on to the other topics and talk about what other exciting opportunities we have for people. But as Anne was saying earlier, this is not just a trip, it's a journey. And we're global citizens here at Nanda Journeys, and I welcome you all to be global citizens with us.
Yeah, and so above and beyond the professional engagement and the continuing education, I mean, the culture that Guatemala offers is so amazing. I mean, you've been there twice, right, Nicola?
Yeah, this is a picture, and a lot of the pictures you're seeing are my pictures or my fellow clients. And this is one of the exciting adventures we have planned for you, which is to hike the Pacaya volcano, which you see pictured here. But when I say hike, if that really isn't your cup of tea, and I'll be honest, it wasn't mine, there is the alternative, of course, which is the local horse, the taxi, as they call it here. So that's available to you too. So you can see the smiles on people's faces. We had such a wonderful adventure here, and to see the hot steam coming off the volcano is truly remarkable. But something that's really important to me is the collaboration we have with Niños de Guatemala. So this is not only a professional delegation, it's a social tourism delegation where we've actively partnered with a nonprofit that has been well vetted. There are a lot of nonprofits around the world that sadly are masquerading as nonprofits, and money is not going back into the community. This particular organization, Niños de Guatemala, they operate 3 schools. So they have 600 children. I visited the schools. This is actually the children I visited with. We made them lunch, and we helped in the kitchen. And if you wish to do that, you can do that too on your visit to this amazing school. So all of the profits from Niños de Guatemala, our partner, goes back into funding the education of these children. But why is that particularly important for this delegation, and how is it linked to healthcare? They have a very, very unique approach to education. It's a one family approach. So they provide mental health services, they provide social services, they provide healthcare support. So this is going to be a really important engagement for you on this particular delegation. But we're also going to be exploring Lake Atitlán. And that has been referred to by Lonely Planet as the closest thing to Eden on Earth. And I can tell you, I agree with them. I just spent the weekend in Lake Tahoe. It was about 4 hours from me. And I think personally, Lake Atitlán is more beautiful than Lake Tahoe out here in California. And she's pretty tough to be beat, but it's truly remarkable. And maybe you can tell me a little bit more about why you think it was so important to include Tikal, because this was a really big discussion point for us. And we thought it was important to take a day out of the program to go visit Tikal National Park.
Well, again, Tikal is very iconic, not just in Guatemala, but in Central America. These ancient Mayan ruins are nothing like other pyramids in the rest of the world. They are, I tried to climb up those steps in another location on the Yucatan, and it's pretty difficult. It's really interesting to see how this civilization built itself in such a sophisticated way centuries ago. And the things that they did, you really wonder kind of about the things that we spend our time doing when these people are so productive and made so many inroads toward advanced civilization. So I'm really looking forward to seeing Tikal, and it's going to be a mind-blowing, so to speak.
Yeah, and you'll be joined by, of course, a local expert. So we layer in local experts along the way. So you'll be accompanied by a local guide from the minute you arrive, of course, to the minute you leave. But interwoven through the adventure are specialist experts that can provide knowledge. And this is an area where you'll receive, guidance by one of the specialists on the Mayan culture, and it is mind-blowing. It's incredible. I learn something new every time I go to Guatemala, and they talk about the Mayan calendar, and we all remember that we thought the world was ending, and they talk to us about why that is important, about the cycle of the Mayan calendar, and it does restart. That's part of it. So I'm very excited for that particular experience. And then also visiting the small villages around the lake. They are unique. They can only be accessed by boat. So the community is very tight knit. The healthcare there that you'll explore is really, it's different, right? As I mentioned earlier, it's not easy to access public medicine in Guatemala. So you'll hear from a local shaman. You'll learn about plant medicine. how important that is and how interwoven it is into everyday life. So this, I think, will be one of the highlights, or at least I believe it'll be one of the highlights for you. A meeting with the birth lady too in a local village community, I think, is going to be so exciting and something that we don't come across very often. And as you mentioned earlier, if you go to other parts of the world, we don't have an opportunity to understand that culture. So this is a particularly exciting reason for that.
I agree, and I think what ties a lot of this together is the family. You know, in these cultures, the family is so important. I mean, we all think our family is important, but family is just integral to every step. And we're going to see that. I think we've seen it before in other places.
Yeah, and Niños de Guatemala, I think, will be eye-opening for you. The foundation was started by a gentleman from the Netherlands. So they have a very, very strict protocol for admitting children. Everybody is welcome, but the family has to agree to everybody being involved. So it's that whole family inclusion of being able to support the child to complete their education, not just start it, but complete it. And I think that's a key element of this program too.
Yeah, and just to kind of touch on the medicinal workshop, I had my own little question as I was listening to you talk. You had mentioned that, you know, it's so unique to kind of understand, you know, local medicine. I know, Stuart, you had mentioned, you know, while you were in China, understanding local medicine as well. Was there anything, I guess, Nicola, was there anything in regards to this particular experience? Because I know that you've actually done it here in Guatemala. Was there anything in this particular experience that surprised you, something that a piece of knowledge that kind of came to you that you were like, oh, wow, I never even thought of that? Or was there something that kind of unique that you
there is. Thank you for the question. I think what I learned was when they harvest the plants, they have different purposes, right? So both in medicine, but also in textiles and also in weaving down there, which is another really important of the culture. I learned that if you harvest a piece of bark in the summer, it will have a completely different impact than if you harvest it, let's say, in the winter. And that could be both from a delivery of solving some kind of problem, or the dye that you have from the bark, it looks completely different, harvested at different times. I mean, plant medicine is absolutely fascinating, and I think I'd love to take a course in it. I really wish we had more of it over here. And Anne, I think you mentioned something that you felt that more of that's coming here, that, you know, meeting of different delivery systems of healthcare. And I think that will open people's minds so much more to there being so much more potential for that to happen.
Indeed.
You know, I one of the things I would say is that, you know, there are a lot of elements to this. I think the people who are skeptical see it as having sort of a placebo effect, which is powerful. There's no question. In medicine, we know that, again, you want to feel better. And if you believe, often it will help you actually get better. But of course, as you know, many plants actually do have medicinal qualities. Many of the drugs we use were derived from plants. Say in my field in cardiology, digitalis, which was one of the early cardiac drugs, is derived from the foxglove leaf. Cona bark is the basis for quinine, which is still an important treatment for malaria. It was converted into quinidine, which is a cardiac drug. So there is much to be learned here, because after all, we're looking at a history that goes back hundreds, maybe thousands of years. And we've had very few clinical trials of drugs that have gone back hundreds or thousands of years. We think a clinical trial that's 5 years old is a well-established clinical trial. So it's a very interesting area, and we should keep our eyes open because there may be some things that not only are transportable, but there are real discoveries made in the natural world.
Yeah, it is a fascinating piece, and I think will be a highlight for many.
Mhm.
And it really is. I mean, I'm coming from a medical background, just this idea of, indigenous medicines versus, modern medicines that we use, just kind of looking at that contrast is such a huge highlight, I feel, in this journey, and really provides something. Again, this is Lake Atitlán, I'm pretty sure, right, Nicola?
Yep, it's Lake Atitlán. The views are something that's, I think, misunderstood about Guatemala. I think there's some misconceptions out there in terms of what Guatemala is. The landscape and the topography is some of the most stunning I've seen, and I'm super fortunate to have traveled to over 50 countries, so I don't say that lightly. And the people are so friendly. I have 4 destinations in my life that I consider my heart destinations, and we all, they sit with us differently. India is one, Cuba's another, Jordan's another, and Guatemala is my 4th, because it truly is that spectacular. The landscapes are stunning. The people are so warm and friendly and have a sense of humor that I think will surprise you. They are just the most delightful people. The food's amazing because of the volcanic ash and the fertile soils. The food's delicious. Everything about Guatemala is truly spectacular. And these views, they're not overstated. You see this every day at the lake. This is what it looks like. And cloudy or sunny, stunningly beautiful both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I mean, even the views are for everyone. And so we mentioned that there's always something for everyone on this itinerary. So some of the people that are listening might be thinking, okay, well, I'm off doing the medical professional continuing education. If I were to bring my husband, my wife, a friend, a guest along with me, what exactly are they going to be doing on the journey? Because, what I love about Nanda Journeys and what you guys do with your professional engagement is this idea of accompanying a guest program. So that way, while the continuing education is happening, there's still, continuing cultural immersion and cultural involvement. So tell us a little bit about what that's like. And I'd love to hear from, Stuart and Anne about some of the things that, they've done overseas in terms of their continuing cultural immersion. So yeah, tell us a little bit about the immersion that the accompanying guest program has.
Yeah, and I love this picture too, and pictures speak 1,000 words, right? And this is actually one of the mamas from the Niños de Guatemala organization. She is the parent of some of the kids you can see here that attend the Niños de Guatemala school. And they run gastronomy, that word was hard for me today, workshops. So here they're making tortillas, obviously very, very important to the culture, made fresh 3 times a day. So you'll have a cooking class. You'll actually have a cacao experience as well. So you'll learn about how cacao and the chocolate is just so important in the culture. So a lot of the women that are being supported by Niños de Guatemala, they're being encouraged to be entrepreneurial. So again, this whole family holistic picture of support. So education and opportunity, as we all know on this call, is critical to the success of any child or any family the world over. And that is definitely the case here in Guatemala. So by participating in these programs, you're actually not only supporting the education of the children, you're creating financial independence for the women and the men of the family as well. So you'll also get to visit one of the smaller communities and really get connected to the local culture, the local community in a way that you really can't do unless you're doing it on a delegation like this. Again, the people are so warm and friendly. Look at those smiles. They're so happy to see you. And this itinerary, I think, naturally blends the professional program and the cultural program. So I would highly encourage people to bring a guest because it just lends itself to it, that the program that you're doing together, the shaman and the birth lady, everybody's going to do that. Because isn't that fascinating to all of us, regardless of whether or not we're in healthcare or not? So bring your guests. They're going to be delighted you invited them along.
Yeah. And I think
I may play hooky and go to the chocolate workshop, but don't say that.
We'll get you some chocolate, Stuart. Don't you worry.
Well, and there is some overlap too. I think
yes.
You want to mention that, Nicola, that everybody is not isolated in one place or the other. There's plenty of overlap. At least that's been our experience. And the more you jump in and participate, the better the connection. And they're so happy that you did, and you get so much more out of it. So
yeah, most definitely. That's exactly the case. And of course, a lot of the program you are all together. So the cultural activities are done both together. And thank you for making that definition. And it's really important. So the only time that the guests and the professional members are apart are when you're in your specific hospital meetings. Let's say you're meeting with clinicians or nurses or professors at the university. That's when our guests are enjoying these wonderful activities that Stuart might escape to, but we hope not.
I do recall, I mean, one thing we all did on Nanda Journeys, we were in Morocco, and we went to a Berber school that was out in the country near the Atlas Mountains. And each member of the delegation had a child who they gave them their name, and they wrote out their name in Arabic, which they gave to each of us as a souvenir. But they were so interested, and I know Anne remembers that visit we made to the school and the enthusiasm of the children, how interesting
I remember
it is
how difficult it was to write in Arabic. It doesn't look that hard, but it's really hard.
I love hearing about your past experiences, and Morocco was a special one for us. And yeah, so joining in, getting involved, we all learn so much by being present, right? And yes, you've got so much that you're taking to the community, but there's so much more that we can take from the people we visit, the friendships we create, and the impact that you're having. And we're going to talk about that here shortly. Truly is significant here in Guatemala. If I could create programs that had this kind of social impact, I would be happy for the rest of my life. I love all of our Nanda Journeys, but this one is extra special. It truly gives back on every corner. Every dollar that we spend is going back to helping these children. And this is a picture, again, of the students from Niños de Guatemala saying thank you to one of my colleagues, Deborah. We're really trying to increase our scholarshiping down in Niños de Guatemala. So we've already sponsored some students. We are contributing on your behalf a donation to Niños de Guatemala for your participation in this program. The Good Hotel where you'll be staying, 2 locations, in Antigua de Guatemala and in Guatemala City. You're staying at the Good Hotel, and the Good Hotel is part of the social tourism network of Niños de Guatemala. Again, it's so beautiful because not only do the profits go back into funding the schools, but as the children graduate from Niños de Guatemala schools, they can then go on to hospitality training and get jobs in the Good Hotel. So you'll learn about this holistic nature of support in this community. And not only are you learning about it, you are helping it to thrive. By joining this journey, you're providing opportunity for kids that, quite frankly, did not exist before Niños de Guatemala established this program. So that gets me giddy, it gets me excited. And if you join this program, please know your impact is profound, not only for you, but for the people you're going to meet along the journey.
Yeah, I absolutely love the idea that you guys have of taking your memories and leaving an impact. I think that's such a great way to see the world while also learning and engaging and just kind of interacting with, people all around the world. So I love that aspect of it as well. One thing that we did want to touch on very briefly was just the fact that, you'd mentioned, Nicola, that the overall idea of what Guatemala is and the actual aspects of what Guatemala is are completely different. And that's why you've been twice. And that's why you're encouraging people to go back. So tell us a little bit about, what your experience has been in Guatemala.
Yeah, I'm on a mission, I think, to change some people's perspectives. This doesn't necessarily occur everywhere, but I think we're only fed one particular element of Guatemala here in the United States, and that's obviously the immigration challenges that we face. So that prevents a dialogue from happening that speaks about how wonderful the people are, how beautiful the landscapes are, how amazing the experience is. And this is a small village just outside of Lake Atitlán. And in the background there, you can see Indian Nose. If you look at it slightly sideways, it actually looks like, you know, a Mayan lie down on the mountain. So these views are spectacular. But safety is important no matter where we go. It's a top priority for us. Easy to say, harder to do. And Nanda Journeys in the past has canceled programs if we haven't felt that it's safe to go there. As recently as last month, we canceled our Peru programs. It's just not the right time to go there. We're not taking people into places where we think there's going to be a safety challenge. It's fully escorted. You're with a local Guatemalan guide the whole time. And like every destination, we talk about this a lot in our world. You have to be vigilant no matter where in the world you are, no matter where you are in the United States. And Guatemala has been well vetted by me, my colleagues. My husband and I were there personally. We did some independent exploring, and then also as part of Nanda Journeys groups. So I myself can tell you, it's a wonderful place to visit and you'll feel exceptionally safe.
Awesome. Great. So before we kind of get to the question and answer, I want to say one more time, question and answer is open. So if you do have any questions about the conversation today, so much information has been brought to light. Please just click on the Q&A button or on the chat button, type in your questions into those boxes. Nicola, Anne, and Stuart will be happy to answer any questions that you have. But before we get to the questions, one final thing. If you are interested in signing up, we fully encourage everyone to sign up sooner as opposed to later. The cost of the trip is $3,999 per person, which includes the 8-night program and all of the flights within Guatemala. The single supplement, if you are planning on traveling as a single, is $349. To hold your space on this particular itinerary, the deposit due is $500 per person. That deposit is fully refundable up until May 31st, 2023, minus a $95 service fee. The reason that I mention that is because this tour is limited to 20 participants. We currently have 17, I think we had 17 people signed up for this webinar alone, which I always count as 1.5 people per. So that's 25 to 30 people right there that are interested in joining us. So if that were to happen, then the tour is already sold out. So I always mention to people, it's better to put your deposit down sooner and know that you have your seat than to deposit later and unfortunately have to be put on a wait list. So if you are interested in joining us, that $500 per person deposit ensures that your seat is held to join Stuart and Anne in Guatemala this October. So for any questions, I don't see any questions in the Q&A right now, but for any questions that you might have, Nicola, how can they kind of reach out to you?
Yeah, and again, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. We'll be following up with you with the recording and also with a registration link. We'll follow up in an email. But if you are ready to register, you can go to www.nandajourneys.com, find the Mayans, Mountains, and Medicine delegation in our list of current itineraries and click the book now. If you have questions, you can call us at 888-747-7501. And please be in touch. We love talking to our clients, prospects, and otherwise. It really is fascinating to talk to you and understand your questions. And again, we'll follow up with you in an email with a link. If you'd like us to send you a form to complete to register this evening, feel free to drop us an email. And again, thank you for joining us and taking time out of your busy schedules to be here with us tonight.
Yeah, before we say goodbye, ask and you shall receive. We did receive a few questions. The question first is about the weather. You always can anticipate those questions. Somebody asked, you're going in October, what can you anticipate the weather to be like in Guatemala end of October, early November?
Yeah, so, and Anne, you could probably help me on this one also, having experienced this part of the world yourself. You know, this Central America, it has a wet season and a dry season, but I feel like it's the same season the year round, pretty much. You're more likely to get afternoon rain, but it tends to be just in a shower. So when I was there at the end of October last year, we had beautiful dry weather. We saw rain once, occasional clouds, but like I say, look at that panorama in the background there. Those clouds create the magic. So you're going to be warm during the day. I actually was a little too warm at the end of October. I needed a little bit more sunscreen than I applied. So you're going to have mixed weather, I would say, temperatures ranging from the mid-60s to mid-70s, with a little afternoon rain is the most typical, but the rain is clearing up October, November, going into their drier days. And Anne, do you have anything to add as far as what weather's like in that part of the world?
You've been there more recently than I have. My recollection is that some areas are at a little bit of an elevation. Guatemala City is. And so a jacket would be a good addition, I'd say.
Yeah, that's a great recommendation. Yes, there is an elevation, so layers, like everywhere in the world. Always travel with layers, but you're going to enjoy typically beautiful weather at that time of the year. But as we're seeing here in the United States today, Mother Nature's playing havoc all over the world, so the patterns are changing everywhere. Who knows?
Another question here is probably for you, Stuart and Anne. I know that you guys travel a lot on your own, but since this is a professional delegation, is there something else that the professional people that are coming for the professional engagement, should they pack anything additional? Should they do anything special in regards to attending this journey and bring something along with them? Or is it just like a regular journey with some professional engagement and experiences?
Stuart, you'll need to unmute. There you go.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I can't think of anything that people would need in terms of equipment or special gear. And again, people tend to dress, I think, less formally in that part of the world. There are some places, for example, where hospital visits, I would wear a shirt and tie. I think that's probably not the case generally in Latin America. Maybe in the larger cities in Brazil or Argentina, but I think casual dress would be appropriate. I wouldn't wear short pants or an uncollared shirt. I would want to be respectful of our host. But I don't think, to answer the question directly, I don't think that one needs any special clothing, gear, or equipment.
As we get a little bit closer, we will chat with our participants about possible gifts for their professional hosts, and that's something we do encourage. And Stuart, Anne, and myself and the team will provide guidance on that as we get closer. And also for Niños de Guatemala, they, as you can imagine, have a continuum of needs, and they share with us regularly the updated list of things that they might need for the school. There is no expectation that you participate in that, but many people say to us, I wish I'd have had the opportunity to support them outside of the program. So again, no expectation for you to additionally participate in any way, but we will give you the opportunity to fund supplies or help the school out based on where they are when you travel in October.
Awesome. And last but not least on the list is another tried and true, but definitely something you're expecting, is currency payments, credit cards. How does that work in Guatemala? Are debit cards, ATMs, how does all of that kind of work in Guatemala?
Yeah, no, another great question, and thank you. So I used my debit and credit cards, both in Guatemala City and Antigua. In Lake Atitlán, we do recommend you have some quetzales with you, which is the local currency. Because you have a local guide with you, they will provide time and an opportunity to visit the local banks. So one thing I will recommend to you is listen to your guide. There are some ATMs that can charge a very high rate, so don't just wander off to an ATM machine down in Guatemala. You may have a surprise on the exchange rate, but your guides will tell you which bank should be used, and they'll provide an opportunity for you. But outside of the smaller villages, your credit cards and debit cards are absolutely fine, but do have a little bit of cash. You do not need to arrive in Guatemala with cash. Again, that opportunity be afforded to you by your guide.
Awesome. This is why we travel with experts like you guys. And that's the last question. So I'll leave the final words to our hosts and to you, Nicola, before I say thank you and goodbye. So any final words from anybody?
And maybe you could have a final word, and then Stuart, and then I'll wrap up.
Well, come on down. It will be worth your while. That's my final word. You'll enjoy it to pieces. So do
Yeah,
it.
thank you. Stuart?
Well, I would second that emotion, and we have never had, knock wood, we have never had, I wouldn't even say we've never had a bad trip. We've never had a trip that wasn't in its own way thrilling and exciting and memorable. And of course, travel is wonderful while you're doing it, but it's also wonderful as you anticipate it, but also as you reflect upon it. It will impact your life. And so I hope everyone who's on the call, can't see you all, but I know you're there, will join us, and we will do our best, certainly, to make the professional side of the trip rewarding, interesting, gratifying in every way that we can. So we're hoping to have an animated, excited, and energetic group.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And that just leaves for me to thank Michael and Stuart for being here this evening. I am so excited for Guatemala. If you have any questions about Guatemala, if it's not obvious, I have a bit of a passion for it. So if you do have additional questions beyond this evening, please be in touch. I'd love to talk to you. And thank you for your time again. And we look forward to seeing you in Guatemala.